Hello, I am D-Man, and today I'll be talking about the deck building card game Dominion, more specifically, the Dominion Dark Ages expansion, more specifically, second editions. Um, some of the early sets have second editions. The base game has a second edition. The first expansion entry has a second edition. Um, Even Cornucopia and Guilds now has a second edition. Dark Ages does not. Not yet, anyways. It probably will at some point. Alchemy's the other one that doesn't have a second edition. It's probably not going to get one. But today I'm going to be talking about a Dark Ages second edition. I've made up a couple of cards that sort of fits within the theme of the Dark Ages expansion. So a lot of them will have spoils and ruins, and will have lots of trashing stuff. And also, trying to predict which cards would get removed. Because I'm sort of trying to be realistic, what cards realistically would get removed. And anyways, that's probably enough talking. We can probably move on to the first card, Rummager. The Mystic is the old card that would get removed. Rummager is the new card that would be added. The Mystic, just as a refresh, will gives you an action and 2 coins. You then name a card, then you reveal the top card of your deck, and if you got it correct, the card goes to your hand. Otherwise, it just goes back on top of your deck. The Rummager is very similar. The difference is you get instead of an action and 2 coins, you get an action, a buy, and you gain a spoils, which is what this middle card is. And then you name a card. If you guess it correct, you put it into your hand, and you gain another spoils. So I'll be honest. I didn't think Mystic would be a card to get rid of. It's a fine card until I saw Tea House, which is basically an objectively better version of Mystic. It's not quite, but it's about as close as you can get to just being objectively better, right? The Tea House always draws you a card. The Mystic sometimes draws you a card. You want to draw cards. I don't know why you wouldn't, right? The Rummager has a higher risk to it, because the Mystic will give you those 2 coins. The Rummager will give you this one time 3 coins, but you have to actually, draw the spoils, which you might not be able to do that turn. Of course, if you guess it right, you get a second one. So the Rummager is really good if you can draw your whole deck, because then it's kind of like $3, maybe $6. That's really good. But you actually have to draw your deck and sort of guess it correctly to get the second spoils. But I think it's got some good potential. Next card we'll be talking about is this penny. It's a $1 treasure. It gives you $1, and when you gain the penny or trash the penny, you gain a spoils. So this thing is a copper, basically. Right? A copper gives you a coin when you play it, this gives you a coin when you play it. The only difference is, hey, you get spoils when you gain it or trash it. Which, is that worth it? It's only $1 to buy, The only other $1 Kingdom card is Poorhouse, which is also in Dark Ages. Back to Penny. Penny is quite good if you have something to, if you can trash the penny, it's good, If you can't trash the penny, it's probably not so good to get you, because the penny itself's not good, right? It's a copper. You don't want coppers in your deck. You do want, the spoils are nice, right? And of course, if you can trash the penny, you get spoils too. So, a card like Counterfeit, which is in Dark Ages, is is a good fit, especially Counterfeit, because it actually, you actually get to play the penny twice, then you trash it, so you actually get an extra $1 off the penny. Very simple. It's another spoils card, which is good because right now there's only 3 cards out of like 35, I think, which gives you spoils, which is not a lot at all. So, at least this way there's two more, although I'm getting rid of one of the cards that gave you spoils. You'll find out what that card is at the end of the video. The next card is the Vagabond, replacing the Beggar. Now, I'm actually gonna be honest, I like the Beggar. I like the Beggar. It's not a strong card, it's pretty weak. But gaining 3 coppers to your hand is it's quite interesting. Because it's $3. That's pretty good. But it's 3 shitty coppers that you don't want. So there's also this reaction where when another player plays an attack, you can get some silvers and you put one on top of your deck. It's good if you get attacked by like a trashing attack like the Knight from Dark Ages, because then it would trash the silver, which is better than maybe something better. The Vagabond is also an action reaction card that costs $2. It says you discard any number of cards, and you get 2 coins per card discarded, costing exactly 0. So, your deck starts with those 7 coppers that cost 0. Awesome. Your coppers are basically silvers at the start of the game, very similar to the removed card Coppersmith. There is also a reaction on this when you discard the Vagabond, other than during when you clean up and you finish your turn off, you can reveal the Vagabond to gain 2 silvers. So, sort of has, the silver thing from the Beggar. If you get attacked by, like, the Knights, hey, guess what? If it finds the Vagabond, it can't trash it because the Vagabond's too cheap. So it gets discarded, and hey, you can get 2 silvers. The silvers are also nice for, Feodum, which, it gives you points per 3 silvers in your deck, so, another, a card to combo with the Feodum is nice. Next, we're going to talk about Sage and the Fossor. The Sage it's not great. You get an action, you reveal cards from the top of your deck until you find one costing 3 or more, you put it in your hand and discard the rest. So it's basically +1 card, +1 action, but it's gonna be expensive. Or, well, not even that expensive, it's $3 or more. That's pretty cheap still. The Fossor is definitely going to be more interesting. It's a +1 card, +1 action. Gain a card from the trash costing up to 6. And then, in games using this card, during your turn, when you trash a card costing up to 6, you may gain a card costing up to 1 more than it. So we'll talk about the top bit first. You can gain cards from the trash, right? There's not that many cards that do that. This is a card that does that. You can gain any card from the trash costing up to 6. In fact, you have to. So if there's something bad in the trash, you'll have to pick it up. And then that bottom part, basically, if there's something that trashes stuff, like, let's say the rats. You trash a card, you could then trash an extra card, and then gain a card costing 1 more than that card. So you could trash the rats to gain a $5 card, and then there's a rats in the trash for you to gain if you want rats, You probably don't, but, there's action cards or other just good cards that you will probably want from the trash, and that bottom text will just help you have good cards in the trash, or it makes the Fossor better, basically. Alright, let's move on to the Cultist is the card being removed, and the Mob is the card being added. So the Cultist had these ruins, which are in the middle there. There's 5 different ruins. They were just bad, not very good cards. The Cultist would let you draw 2 cards. Each other player would gain a ruins, and then you could play another Cultist from your hand for free. And then when you trash the Cultist, you got 3 cards. So the idea is you just buy like a ton of Cultists, you play a bunch of them, and you just you put all these ruins in your opponent's deck, just turn their deck to crap. It's actually quite a strong card. But it's maybe it's a bit too ruthless. Which is why it's getting replaced by the Mob here. And another card, you'll see you'll see that next. The mob, it's a $5 action attack. No ruins. You draw two cards. You may play a mob from your hand. If you did play a mob from your hand, each other player would then discard down to three cards in hand. Also, when you gain the mob, you can trash two cards from your hand, or up to two. So, the first mob you get, you probably want to trash some cards from your hand if you can. The first mob when you play, it's not going to do much, right? You draw two cards and then that's it. That's pretty bad. But if you get a second mob, and then you get them together, you draw two, play the mob from your hand, you draw another two, and then everyone discards down to three. Which, hey, that's pretty good. That's discarding down to three. It sucks, that hurts you. That hurts your turn. So hurting other people like that is good, but not too annoying. Right? That's like you're not going to be able to do it right away, right? You have to buy two mobs and have them be together. That's not going to happen like instantly. It's going to take you a little time, which is what I like about it actually. Next we have also the cultist is also being replaced by this arsonist. So I mean, hey, I'd say I actually like cultists, but yeah, it was clearly I did because I split it into two different cards here. The arsonist is also an action attack looter for $5. This one says you trash a card from your hand, you draw a card per one it costs. Each other player gains a ruins, and it has the same when you trash this plus three cards as cultists. So the arsonist is pretty cool because hey, you can trash cards and draw how many cards? I mean, if you trash a gold, that's $6. You draw six cards. That's really cool. You have to trash a gold for it, but it might be worth it. Worst comes to worst, you could just trash like a copper or you trash an estate at the start, draw two cards, you got rid of an estate from your deck. Awesome, and you hurt your opponents. Nice. You could also trash the ruins. The ruins cost 0, so it's a bit sad, but you could do it. And of course, you could even trash the arsonist with another arsonist. You would draw 8 cards, right? Because you draw 3 when you trash it, plus 5 because it costs 5. So you would draw A if you trash an arsonist with an arsonist. And, I mean, there's lots of cards that want to be trashed in Dark Ages. So, I mean, arsonist is cool. Next we have this card here. It doesn't replace anything. The Antiquarian. It is a $2 action looter card, so it also has ruins. You draw 3 cards, which is quite good. You then trash ruins from the supply, then gain a ruins from the trash. And then when you trash the Antiquarian, you get 3 buys. We'll talk about the buys first, actually. You probably don't want to trash it for 3 buys, unless it's the only way to get more than 1 buy per turn, right? If this is the only way to get plus buys, good luck, I mean, to be fair, plus 3 buys is a lot of buys, but you don't really need 3 buys a lot of the time. You don't need plus 3 buys a lot of the time. But it's an option. The top bit, I mean, drawing 3 cards for $2 is actually quite nice. I mean, in the base game, there's Smithy, which costs $4, and it draws you 3 cards, and that's all it does. Obviously, Antiquarian has this downside where you trash a ruins from the supply, so you basically you gain a ruins no matter what. Even if the ruins pile has run out, if there's ruins in the trash, you gotta pick them up. The only sort of benefit is if there are multiple different ruins in the trash, you could sort of pick which ruins you want. They're all bad, but some of them are not going to be as bad as others. I mean, Ruined Market gives you a buy, so if you want to buy, you can get the Ruined Market. If that's in the if you have a choice, right? There might not be a choice. It's a cool card. It's another card which has ruins. Again, there's only 3 cards right now in Dark Ages which has ruins, which is ridiculous because there's like 50 ruins. You don't use all those ruins unless you're doing a 6-player game for some reason, but why is there only 3 cards? I mean, I like ruins. Why not have more? I'm sure there will be more once a second edition actually, exists. But it's just a bit weird that the first edition didn't put more emphasis on these cards. Uh, yes, the Urchin Mercenary. This is the final card. These are both old cards. So these are sort of together. The Urchin, you would draw a card and get an action. Each other player would discard down to 4. Then, if you played another attack card while the Urchin was in play, you could trash the Urchin to get the Mercenary, which was an attack which you could not buy, couldn't get. You could only get it basically through the Urchin. It would let you trash 2 cards from your hand, and if you did, you draw 2 cards, you got 2 coins, and then each other player discarded down to 3 cards in hand. So they're quite good. In fact, it could be very good, you know. Which is sort of the problem with this card, because it's kind of random if you actually, you know, if you play the, you know, sometimes the best thing to do is to buy 2 Urchins and then just hope you get them together, which isn't great because the odds aren't amazing there. Like you might not get both Urchins in the same hand of cards. So, you want to see what the new stuff is? Here we go. It's the Pauper and the Ransacker. So it's another pile which has ruins. In fact, both of these cards involve ruins in some way. The Pauper lets you choose one, discard down to 3 cards in hand, or gain a ruins onto your deck, or gain 3 coppers to your hand. So the gaining 3 coppers to your hand, that's the beggar effect. Choose one. Plus reactions, or discard a ruins from your hand for 3 coins, or trash the Pauper to get a Ransacker. That is a lot. So it's sort of like Count, which is in Dark Ages, where you sort of have a bad option. You got to pick a bad option, but then you get a good option. So at the start of the game, you're probably discarding down to 3, or maybe gaining 3 coppers to hand. Probably discarding down to 3, and then either getting the 3 actions or trashing it to gain a Ransacker. You could always gain the ruins onto your deck, and then hey, you could discard a ruins for 3 coins, or you know, if you just desperately need actions, you can get 3 actions, or if you desperately need money, you could get 3 coppers to your hand, but you know, that's not a great way to get money. Now the Ransacker, just like the Mercenary, you can't gain it or buy it, you know, you have to, the only way you can get this is through the Pauper. The Ransacker lets you draw until you have 7 cards in hand, then you trash a card from your hand, and if the card you trashed is an action card, you gain a card costing up to 2 more than it, so you trash a Ruins, you could get a $2 card, because Ruins are an action card. If you trash a Treasure, each other player gains a Ruin, so you trash that copper, each other player gets a Ruins, which, you know, is cool because, hey, you know, the Pauper could discard Ruins for 3 coins, but, you know. And if you trash a Victory card, you get a silver, which, hey, that's a nice little thing with Feodum. So there's a lot going on here, but, you know, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. With the Pauper, you could, like, discard down to 3. Then with the Ransacker, you could draw back up to 7. So that's something you can do. You could get the 3 coppers to your hand, and then, you know, you could then maybe trash one to give each other player ruins. If you're getting attacked by the Ransacker and you've got a lot of ruins in your deck, you could obviously discard a ruins for 3 coins. Or if you just need actions, you could just buy a Pauper and not go for the Ransacker. There's a lot of options here. Like, I'll be honest, there's a lot of options. But it is cool. I think, you know, I think this is more fair than Urchin Mercenary. It's probably more complicated, I would say. I mean, there's a lot going on here, but these cards are sort of more complicated anyways, because it's not just one card, it's 2 separate cards working together. Anyways, that's not the end though, even though that's the final card. Let's talk about some of the other cards which I think would get removed. I think Vagrant's gonna get removed. This was sort of foreshadowed with the Vagabond card. Vagrant's fine. It's a fine card, you know, you draw a card, get an action, reveal the top card of the deck, and if that card is a curse, a ruins, a shelter, or basically if the card sucks, you get it into your hand. I like it, but it doesn't do a whole lot, you know. I have to pick I basically have to pick like 8 or 9 cards to get rid of, and this one was just one of the less interesting ones. Pillage. This was that card I was talking about earlier, which gave out spoils. It's an action attack where you trash. When you play the pillage, you trash it, so it's a one-time card. Then, if you did, you get two spoils, which is that's alright. And then each other player with five or more cards in hand reveals their hand and discards a card that you choose. Okay, that's a pretty good attack. You literally pick which card you to make your opponent discard. That's nice. Getting two spoils, that's not bad. But obviously the issue is you play it once and it's gone. And that makes pillage not a very strong card at all. It's quite weak. And then rebuild, it gives you plus 1 action. You upgrade your victory cards. It's just controversial. Like, people just don't like this card. I think it's fine, but like I get it because basically there's definitely games where you could just the whole game is just buying rebuild, buying victory cards, and you basically that's the whole game, which isn't great. You kind of want to buy lots of different cards. That's what makes the game fun. But so be it. And yeah, I mean that is Dark Ages. That's what I would think his second edition of Dark Ages would look like. All the other cards would be the same, of course. Let me know what you think. And yeah, I'll see you all next time.